Today we get to talk about the inner map again. Yippee! Second time around, inner map 2 or a 55th time, who knows? But a lot of fun. Hi, Alex. There you are. Good time to wonder, where are we on the inner map right now? Looking at Kathleen's blouse, unless it's an entire like jumpsuit thing, which would be really fun, but no. Oh, okay. And that's, yeah, it's like, okay, right there, I'm in appreciation. Yeah. So lots to talk about today. Yippee-ki-yay, and there's Zoe. Well, this is our 8th time of the symposia for this round, and we can collect like things to start sorting through, because we actually have we have one official symposium left that was on the official calendar, but we have 2 coaching classes left. And so the last one is really a wrap-up time to make sure that we can walk through things, talk about business stuff. You know, how do you start and end a session? How do you set up sessions? You know, just those basic questions that people have. So we'll get to that. We can always talk about it all along the way. But in terms of this time and next time, it's really pulling together the last pieces of pithy, substantive, theoretical kinds of, what's the noun there? Things, issues, stuff. So that's what we're up to. But I wonder if anybody has any burning anythings right now before we start talking more about the inner map today. Yes, Vanessa.
I have a really specific question, and it's about the persona interview.
Yeah.
Is that all right? So the question, what drifts do you most rely on? So I did 2 persona interviews today. And with someone who's not involved in this community and doesn't really know what we're talking about, I struggled to ask the question and have it be understood. So I kind of had to like go like around and stuff like that. And I'm wondering if you have a, you know, non-expert way of asking that question for someone who doesn't know.
Along the way, I added that in basically in response to the essentials that I was teaching. I'd say just drop the question. It's confusing if you don't have any idea what a drift is. So I'd say just exit off of your interview. What it really is any way that we move away from presence. So in general, that's what a drift is. And there's a drift list that would play with. So, but to try to introduce that in the middle of an interview, I think is just awkward. So.
Okay. I mean, I found it quite helpful. Like it actually led to a breakthrough for the person.
And then,
so like I kind of did an example, like, you know, like my inner perfectionist likes to do this, or, you know, like that kind of stuff. But okay, thank you. I will think what other ways to ask.
Well, so Vanessa, you teach us. What did you do? Hey, Bobby.
Okay. So I said, so what are the kinds of things that you do when you're in this persona? And then I gave a couple examples.
Great.
And I was with a couple, and so
wow,
she was having a harder time, and then I invited her partner to say, do you have a sense of maybe what she does?
Nice.
And they actually both said the same thing. So, and then that led to a great breakthrough. So, okay.
So funny. It's definitely an afternoon for humility for me. So great. Let's do what you said. Yeah. So
what are the ways to distract yourself?
Yeah, great. Perfect. And maybe even to rephrase that question.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I also, I mean, in a similar vein, but I like to add in, like with regards to this one, kind of what triggers you to come online, or which situations actually tend to activate you, and that can be a helpful one in my experience.
Yes. In fact, I'm visualizing a different interview. I don't know, I think we're up to 5 or 6. So a different interview that has that very question, Alex. So that's a really good question. Like, really, what brings you forward? That's an excellent question to start to see. Oh yeah, wow, I do come forward every time somebody says that thing to me or uses that tone, or I don't get what I want or whatever. Yeah. So to be able to be conscious about that. Whew. Okay. Well, so today we're going to play more with the inner map and then some other pieces along with that. We haven't really talked about FACT, so we're going to talk some about that within this structure. You'll start to see how that folds together. So we'll get to that. And I want to go more in depth about the functions of the inner map so that you really have some sense of, we've kind of brushed through that, but the point of understanding the functions is to see how adaptive every state of consciousness is. Instead of, I certainly know for me, there can be this sense of, okay, better to be above the line. I like it above the line, and I say that. But I think what gets lost in that is an understanding that everything on that map, all of those states of consciousness, have a reason to be there. And so I want to press that point more so that you really can start to appreciate despair and appreciate shame and appreciate guilt. Like it does something for us. So instead of, well, we shouldn't feel that, and I don't think any of you is taking that from this, but even beyond we shouldn't feel, it's like more like there are times that is the perfect thing to feel. Like I want to feel that. Like that would be weird to not feel sad, right? Or to not feel angry. Like there's a reason. It's adaptive. It's a good idea, and to actually strengthen those muscles of every single one of those states of consciousness. So that could be a goal that you have, is to get even better at shame. Okay. Some of you have really already, you've kind of checked that off your list. You're a master at it. So you might not have to spend more time there, but you might need a little more time in pride. Who knows? So that's one of my goals or aspirations of my lifetime, is to get great at all of those states of consciousness. Because why not? It's like every color in the rainbow. So I'd like to walk through those. And then today and tomorrow, I really want you to know how good you are at inducing states of consciousness, so that you get better at that. You see how good you are at that yourself, and then you can use your skills with other people. Now, can somebody remind me? I don't know that we did that. I was going through my notes. I couldn't see. Did we do that in our last time? Any other time in our practice time together? Have we done any induction stuff?
We have.
We have. So
I think it was during Coach 1.
Okay, so we would be revisiting that. All right, that's good for me to know. But Stacy's saying no, so maybe you're not. Yeah, so fine to come back to that. But that's helpful. Thanks, Megan, for being very clear about that. Okay, so any thoughts or questions so far? All right, well, I'm gonna go find the functions, and I'm gonna put that into your into the chat. Finally made one that has page numbers on it. So there we go. Now, again, I've shown you this handout before, but I was going to walk through it a little bit more carefully. Not the most I don't know, enlivening experience on a Friday afternoon, except for to really press home this point again with your clients who are going to walk in all of these states, that instead of, okay, they should just not be in the state, for them to start to really appreciate why would they want to be in any of these states. And so that's what I want to do. So I'm going to share my screen, and there it is. Now, this stuff, just to remind you, okay, it's that each of these has a function. It's a good idea to have a reactive brain. Good idea to have a creative brain. Good idea to know which to use. It's like a hand of cards, like to be able to play which one at whatever, like to be able to be conscious about what's, how you're moving through the world. I think I might have said this the last time, I can't remember, that when I was driving to Denver a few weeks ago, I thought, yeah, thanks, reactive brain. Like it was like really appreciating my reactive brain, because I was scared and there was a lot of cars, and I was happy to have all of this going on, knowing that, yes, it was going to use up energy, knowing I was in a stress response, that I was identifying cars as threats. They weren't all threats, but it was good for me to have that, that whole way of being, if I'm going to drive around in this three-dimensional world. Now, then can I still be in creative brain? Can I be thinking and imagining? Well, only to a point. I mean, that's not really where I want my resources to be going when I'm driving. Maybe I'll start being dreamy, but that's, if you've driven with me, probably not the time you want me to be dreamy, says Kathy. So then finding that in other times and other places, that more open focus, healthy response, where I'm deciding at a different time that I want to really be spreading out my attention. So just kind of to remind us of this. So going to these specific functions. Now, I wonder really what I want to say about this. I want to say, as we walk through this, I would like you to appreciate every persona that you have, and maybe that's how you could make this more interesting for you, is with each of these states of consciousness, could you list down the personas of yours that show up when you are in pride, for example? So, for example, I don't know if, I think you've met Mrs. Victoria Hudson Smith. Now, I didn't know Mrs. Victoria Hudson Smith was in pride, which is funny because she sounds snooty. I should have known. So this is a persona of mine that I thought was actually essence until we were buying a car. We bought a car a few years ago at the Toyota dealer. Ever since then, I've had kind of a thing against Toyotas, really, because they kept us waiting too long. We're sitting there and sitting there. We bought the damn car, and now we're sitting in the place and just waiting, and people weren't talking to me. And after about, I don't know, it might have been a full hour. It might have only been 45 minutes. Mrs. Victoria Hudson Smith was miffed. She just was not happy. If only somebody had come along and told us or given me a Coke, I would have been happy. But I was definitely in this place of sort of some contempt and my own alpha status. I kept thinking, I just can't spend all this money and they can't tell me what's going on, right? So I had a whole story going on. And I was pretty stuck there. And you can tell I could still remember it. I'm not sure I have moved through it. You can tell. What was I really feeling? Well, I left. Kathy stayed. So that was, I let myself go with my activation. So for you, consider for you, who are your pride personas? When you're righteous, when you are better than, when you are power up, what are your personas? Now I'm going to unshare just because, so we can share a little bit of that. Anybody, because these are the ones, right? Especially because we're very nice. And there's, for all of the feminine energy here, there's plenty of masculine energy, but for all the feminine energy, we also, right, might not want to own that we have this power over part of us. So anybody want to tell us about a persona or several? Yes, Elizabeth.
I've got a really great pride persona, which is just like the best parent. Where like I know everything and my partner doesn't know anything, and he's just kind of like a lackey, and I'm awesome at everything. And like, thank God I'm here because everything would fall apart without me.
Right. Thank God. And does this parent have a name?
Like mom of the year, I think.
That's right. Mama of the year. Great. Good thing you're around, Mom. Who else?
I think my version of that is my know-it-all. And then I'll have like a, I don't know, there's a lot. I have a lot up here. I do. Like versions of hero and big sister and know-it-all, like they're similar, but yeah. I know better than you. You don't know what you're doing. Yeah.
And going back to the adaptive part of this, good idea to know it all some of the time. Like to be able to, for us to be able to turn to Sarah and say, so, what should we do? And Sarah will be like, well, clearly the thing to do right now is.
Right, yeah.
And to see how that persona can disconnect from your inner experience long enough to be able to step out and deal with the crisis or deal with the issue at hand. Very adaptive. We need that. We need folks to be willing to say, yeah, this direction, go. Anybody else want to tell us about you?
I just had one of mine pop in. This one of mine loves to try to keep a sense of control and like things tidy and orderly, and will contempt if John reaches in the popcorn bowl and just spills half of it. Like,
oh my God. Oh, goody.
Yeah, careless. Like, come on. Yeah, so that one came in.
Great. Yeah, and then of course we can have entire glue clubs of personas that can just sort of pull together and be like, I know, my God, what was he thinking? Popcorn everywhere. Oh, have entire conversations, believing that we're right. The only problem with any of these is that we, well, A, believe it, and then B, that we get stuck in it, right? So any of these states of consciousness, especially reactive brain, they're so costly. So to get stuck in these, stuck as if it's true, of course I should be the one to be in charge of this, right? That's the issue, not to be in it, but to be stuck in it. Okay, so now let's go back, and the rest of you don't have to tell us. Well, we know you have them though. Okay, how about your anger personas? So those personas that show up, and the reason they're there is to exude direct aggression, to beat on their chest, to be like, I am the alpha and you must obey me, because that's my job right now, is to make sure that I'm in charge and that you know that I'm in charge. So,
Julie, I have a question on this one.
yes.
What makes anger different from pride? Like, I see pride mobilize anger, and I'm thinking to myself, anger feels pretty mobilized. So I'm wondering how they're different.
So thank you. they're definitely both mobilized, because anything from agitated fear, that's mobilized, then anger, anger and pride are all in that mobilized character or category. I would say the difference is at pride, I can get other people to do this for me. I don't have to do the dirty work anymore. I have lieutenants now to do this for me. I have somebody else. If look at Trump, my favorite example of pride. He doesn't have to do it. He has plenty of people around him that are willing to be the kind of henchmen who are going to follow through. Putin, right? They're going to follow up and say, yes, I know that if I don't do this, this person, of course, poor guys, right? But it's that masculine energy. If I don't do it, I'm going to have to pay the price to this person. So I better do it. And now I'm going to do it for them. Wait till your father comes home.
That makes sense. Thanks.
And so to put righteousness into that category, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, that righteousness is like this, I don't know if it's just a national habit right now, or national, maybe it's been a species-wide experience for our whole time on the planet. I have no idea. But to really see it that way, like, oh, that if I'm like walking around saying I am right about X, Y, and Z, all of the things that we've been very right about in the last 5-6 years, my politics, my scientific whatevers, I am so right. And that I can just use that because I know somebody is going to be behind me, willing to be aggressive about it. It's going to back me up. Kind of intense. Kind of my body's freaking out about that. Like, what?
But Julie, why is that? So evolutionarily speaking, you may have already said this and I missed it, but so why is that helpful?
Because some of the time we want somebody to be in charge. We want needs. I don't know why I have to stop it. Like right now, spam my phone. Some of the time we want to create social order. Here's my point of all of this, which is to me a fascinating point. This is all to maintain hierarchy. This is all to maintain social order. All of these emotions are built into us to maintain social order. That's their function. So
sorry.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Go ahead, Sarah.
Well, I mean, I love Kathleen's question because I hadn't really thought about that. Like the difference is you can get people to do the work for you. I think maybe I've heard you say that, but the function of that is, well, that keeps the species going if people are willing to follow. So that, okay. Yeah, that's landing for me now. I think that makes sense.
Well, it's a subtle but really important point. Yeah, and so how do I get people to follow me? Well, through my direct aggression. If I'm threatening enough, right? I mean, thank you, Donald. He's very good at this. I mean, who knows? I have no idea behind the scenes, but it certainly feels to me like very sinister. Like there's this backroom aggression that has happened that has scared people enough that they are then willing to follow through by being the lieutenant.
I'm thinking about January 6th and Trump being like safe and protected and his like not in it and not having to use his energy and like to actually physically threaten people.
Perfect example.
Then yeah, there's other people that are there in the anger.
They're there. They can express it. They can beat other folks over the head and pay the price. And he just could come out completely scot-free. Yeah, that's a great example. Great example. And plenty of people, right? believe that that's very useful for our country, that really like that, feel safe because there's somebody who's doing that. I mean, that's supporting something in us about, thank God there's somebody in charge, especially as things are kind of shaky, as we're, as well, in my opinion, patriarchy is crumbling. This is what it looks like. What is patriarchy? It's hierarchy. That's what it is. It's the same thing. So as that's shifting gears and we're like, wait a second, we're not using the same ways as we used to. Some folks are really scared about that. Like, what does that mean? I liked it when men were in charge and women were subservient. That made me feel better. It's like, yeah, I understand that. Totally understand that. And now you're shaking that up and I don't understand why. Yeah.
I had
Julie.
somebody,
Okay, I'll stop the share because that's a good one. Okay, we'll talk about that. What? I don't know who's stopping.
I just wanted to, with Trump, somebody described Trump as like he didn't actually need a lot of energy. Like his pride actually doesn't take a lot of energy, right? So when we're talking about that difference between pride and anger, he is very much in his own. I mean, that might be his essence. I don't know. Is that possible? And then I also just have the question around like the presidency itself and the prime minister, wherever you are, the leader. That does seem as if that is always going to be in that place in terms of the hierarchy. And I mean, it'd be interesting to think about what a president could look like from above the line.
Yeah, I mean, great question. It's very efficient. It's very efficient to say this is, I mean, it took me a long time. I don't know if anybody else had to catch up with. I just wasn't so aware that until Trump was president, he could just say, yeah, well, Trump said, now we're going to do this about taxes. It's like, what? Oh yeah, that's been happening all along. It's 1/3 of the balance of power in our government. But I forgot, like one person could do that. It's very efficient. Very efficient. So there's a lot to be said for it. You don't have to spend a lot of time and energy to figure stuff out.
Julie, I had a question. Can there be a different side to pride? Like I know we're talking about Trump and it feels like sort of this very much sort of villain, but I see sometimes I can go into pride if there is an emergency situation. And so, for example, I do very, very well in emergency situations. I just always have. And so, for instance, there was this young man who was cut up. He had hurt himself and it was cold and he had no shoes or socks on and no shirt. And he was sitting in the middle of the road.
Oh.
And so some people had stopped to help him and I said, I stopped and Vanessa, she's like, be careful. So I just got out and I just started talking to him. Like the other people were kind of fumbling and I started talking to him and I'm like, what's your name? And I was reaching and I grabbed to see what his pulse was. And I could tell, that he was probably high. And so I just, I gently but firmly asked him, hey, can you tell me what you've been taking and what's going on? And he was sobbing and he wanted to kill himself and all of this other stuff. But that's just naturally what I do. I know how to handle a situation like that. So I would describe that as going into a bit of pride in that I know what to do. And I'm certainly not going to push over an EMT or something. Like I'm not suggesting that. But yeah, I have. Same thing happened at work. A woman's father died and I just jumped right in and everyone's like, wow, where did you learn to do that? And I'm like, I don't know. I just, and I'm that person that is like, you call 911. This is what's happening. Yeah. And then, so that I see almost as pride because I'm definitely in a persona. I've dumped into a persona. And then afterwards, I usually feel my own emotion, which is probably fear. But in that moment, I am that person that if I see somebody getting the crap kicked out of them, there's a good chance I might run in between that.
Yeah. It sounds more like anger to me. Like
more anger?
Aggression. Now, this is a perfect example of it being adaptive. people know, listen to you. It's declarative, it's clear, it's power over. Do this, sit down. That's exactly what we want in that situation. It's just if you get caught up in that as if that's who you are, ready to come home and then
Right.
go order Vanessa around, like, sit down.
I will admit I do that in the kitchen. I think I was meant to be a chef because I'm like, do this, do that. And she's like, I'm not cooking with you anymore.
Well, see, then
ya.
there's that problem with relationships.
Right. So I've lost my sous chef because she's like, I'm not coming in there. And I'm like, I swear I won't say a word. But it's hard. I mean, it's very hard.
Yeah, it's that unconscious stuff. I was just working with a couple who are way into power struggle, and it's funny. I'm not usually this. Is that true? I don't know. I won't say that. I said to him, "You are very declarative." I said declaratively, but it was driving her crazy. She's very powered down at the moment because he says things like, "Well, because that's typically how this happens, is people do it this way." Things very clear, declarative. And she believes him, and she's like, and then she wonders why she feels bad about herself. So I was trying to teach him how to be more relational and say things like, I wonder if maybe you might be like, add some qualification and things that would add connection that he doesn't really know how to do. It's not been his experience in relationships, I guess. Plus, people don't usually even notice that stuff until they run aground in relationship. It's like, I don't know why I don't like being around you. Maybe, and I think because it has to do with this. Yeah. Okay. Anything else before we go back to agitated fear? Oh, so think about your personas. Did you get some? I have an exploder. Here. Pardon? Anybody have one?
I have this
So
really,
Julie, oh, sorry.
that's okay. I have this really critical one, but I'm actually thinking it's maybe more pride than anger. Like you're doing it wrong and it should be done this way. And I guess that's more pride.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. Criticism.
Yes.
I'd put that up in pride, because
Okay.
who else would be critical except for the ones that, of course I know better than you.
Yeah.
There's that contempt element to criticism, just for your own good. It's what do we call it? Constructive criticism.
Julie, what if your go-to is to react in anger, but what you really are is afraid?
Exactly. I know. Right? This is where this stuff gets very, like, I don't really know how to think about this, putting it together, because okay, here's one way to think about it. Because I'm disconnecting from myself, I'm in anger. Why don't you? I worked with a family yesterday. The mom, poor mom. She's I'm angry all the time. And then there's kids, they're like, and they're mad. And then there's dad, like, I'm not mad. Like, wait. Oh, this is what it looks like. Well, they're all scared. Mom is scared all the time. Poor thing. Oh, she's so scared. And the kids are so scared. And dad's so mad. So where did we start? Oh, yes, mistaking. Because she sounds angry. She's trying to be an alpha. She's trying to establish herself, but it's alienating her so much from the family. And everybody's freaking out and they're just falling apart as a family. Yeah.
Julie,
Yeah.
I would love to add to that because I've really been playing with that difference, because both within myself, but as I teach it, and you even did it, that I'm so angry, but that's the fight fear. So anytime the fear comes up from the front or my jaw comes forward, and, oh yeah, well you just need to, oh yeah, like any of those kind of statements for me is fight fear. And I can witness it in other people. It can be really subtle, like, whereas The anger comes from the back. I can feel it in my back shoulders. I can feel it in my neck. And it's the no, I don't want that. No, I'm in charge here. Like there's a very different energy piece for me. I just gave myself goosebumps. So much energy running through, but that like succinctness versus like, oh, anything here. So it's,
And I think what you're getting at is the difference between persona and then flow. Persona is doing the defensive maneuver, the drift, the thing that isn't actually coming truly from myself. What's really this place is more in my body versus this place is something that I've learned. Try that.
and I can have anger. I can have anger personas that, and the distinction is where I feel it in my body.
Right.
Because if I'm like, oh, well, they did, and I start ruminating, then it's a persona. Like it's such a distinct feeling versus anytime my jaw comes, or anytime I do any of that kind of movement, it's the fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me. I don't know if that's helpful.
So going back to the map for a moment and noticing then, oh, what's next? Agitated fear. Isn't that so interesting? I'm just fascinated by this. Why are these things right next to each other? This agitation, like the flight to the fight, like physiologically, they're right there, like, and for mammals, right? I really want to run away, but if you keep me from running away, I'm going to get mad, right? Think about like we've got those bunnies in our yard. So they freeze and then they run away. But if I was going to stop them, I'd be scared of that little bunny. I don't know what a bunny will do if it's trapped. Do you? Right. So these going together, it won't, pardon me.
It won't hurt you.
It won't.
A bunny. No.
It should like, angry bunny. They have teeth, probably. I don't want to find out. Right. So these go together for us physiologically, threat-wise. And no wonder we get so confused between these two, so that people confuse right here. Like the dad yesterday, he was confusing his fear because he goes into frozen fear. I think so that he doesn't have to feel angry, because I think this is freaking him out. Like, how do you be a nice man and have anger? I think that's very tricky. So I think he freezes himself instead. And then the people around him, well, right, it all goes together. They confuse their fear for anger. This is all mixed up. This is very, very common that these two are confused for folks. So to be watching for that. The victim thinks they're not angry. They think they're just scared and frozen and sad, right? Villain, hero doesn't think they're feeling any of that stuff. They're up here in pride and anger, right? But in fact, this is what's underneath, what's really going on. So then what's the adaptive function of agitated fear? Get the hell away. Good idea. Good idea. Get away. Uh-oh, I have to update that. There's that sumo. I was trying to include the fear melters. And now it's called, what are you calling it, Cynthia?
It's now called root.
Root. Okay, so I will update this. I'll update it during the break and put it back in.
Thank you.
Rooting down into. So that's Katie's version of what to do when you're feeling agitated fear is you root down in For me, I'm very mammalian here and think for people to get away is a good idea. Just let your body tell you, I'm gonna go. Now, can you breathe and slow down? Yeah, sure. Can you actually come back into your body? Yeah. And then we know this question, what's the perceived threat? So noting to yourself, what are my agitated fear personas? I have an oh no, and a little red hen. The sky's falling. So I've got two. And anybody want to share yours? Stop the share.
I'm just going to say I spend most of my time up in pride and anger, and
Okay.
I don't have any sense of what and then I know sadness and despair as well, but I need to get to know my fear personas.
Right? Perfect. Good. Now you can fill it. It's like these, I'm seeing a page of a coloring book, and you haven't put in the yellow yet. Right? So woohoo, personas to be discovered.
I think I have one that like leaps ahead to the future. Like, okay, this little thing's happening, and that means like, oh, this is what's going to happen 3 years from now.
Oh my God.
Continues like,
right?
is worried and jumping into the future kind of thing.
Yeah.
I have a flee up of, oh, I'm gonna get really logical and I'm gonna figure it out, and it's all that I'm gonna just be really little and like, so flee up into my logic brain.
I have
I
this
go
like
right into fix it. Oh, sorry.
Fix it.
I go right into fix it.
Oh, good one. Yeah, look. I have a whole cup. And Alex, did you have one too?
Oh yeah, I have a sense of urgency. Dwarf is kind of how I imagine it, and it's just like flustered and kind of pacing.
Oh, hold on. Adaptive. It's adaptive. Good idea. It just is costly if you stay in it. Okay. So, frozen fear. Ooh, because now I want to tell you the thing. Cynthia's already heard it twice, but I'm going to tell you too because I'm so pleased with finding it. But wait, you have to wait for a little. That's my teaser. Frozen fear. Okay, let your body do that. Like, first step into immobilization. We just tilted into that other, we tipped into immobilization on the map. Good idea. Brilliant of your body. Yay. So smart. What does it do? Look, it stops you like, and then you right away, whew, what is that? So you can stand there and look, what is that? I don't know. And look at this, find and obey the alpha. Look at that word, obey. Well, your persona is looking for this person. I just remember George Bush at this moment after 9/11. And remember he stepped out into that, I don't know, with those firefighters and with the flag behind him. And he's, I can't even remember what he said. What I remember is go shopping. Like, okay, but I was looking for him. I was happy that he did that. Like, okay, there's somebody in charge. It's not bad. So, like, I want to know. There's a whole, after the 9/11, I was reading disaster stuff and reading about people that was their job. And there was one man, I have no idea who was he? I couldn't give you a name, but he actually had trained, there was a whole floor of people on in the Twin Towers, one of the floors, that he had trained over and over that if there was a problem, they needed to go get up, move over and go down the steps. And they trained and they did, because other people got frozen and they didn't know what to do. And there was nobody to tell them what to do. This was an adaptive response. What should I do? I don't know what to do. Who's going to tell me? Nobody. That's tough. I get afraid that I would just go into frozen fear. Well, that's a good idea. That's why I know somebody who was in a plane crash. And so I learned from her, look for the exits every time. Look for the exits because you're not going to think about it in the moment. So I do. I stand there. I actually listen to the flight attendants and I look for the exits, right? Because maybe I will be in a freeze response. I bet I would. Very adaptive. So who are your frozen fear personas? Oh, and now I'm going to tell you the cool thing. New book that I've been reading that my dog liked also, Imaginable. And she's a futurist, and her thing is imagine 10 years out, imagine all these things so that we can be ready. They imagined, a whole group of her cohorts imagined what they might do in a pandemic about 10 years ago. That's cool. But here's the thing. She found this guy, Stephen Mayer, who became, because she was talking about learned helplessness. And many of you probably know this classic experiment with the poor dogs who are being subjected to electric shock, and then they can leap over this little net and go to the other side of the room and get away from the shock. And that's, except what they did is with some of the dogs, they didn't let them go to the other side of the room. They were trapped and they just got shocked. Oh, it was 1950 something. So I think they don't do that anymore. But so it's a classic experiment. And from that came this whole theory called learned helplessness that I certainly learned many times. And the idea was that these dogs, the ones that couldn't jump away, learned to be helpless, and they became disorganized, and they would just sort of fall on the floor and pee, and they were chaotic, and they were not functional anymore. So the idea was this is similar to people that get depressed or just don't have a will to live, that they've learned, they've been subject to violence, or they've learned that they can't get away. Okay, so that's what I grew up with as a psychologist. Well, okay, she says, nuh-uh. He was watching the circuitry of this. I don't know how he did that. I haven't read his work yet, so I want to. But he discovered that the original theory had it all backwards. We don't learn helplessness. The brain assumes helplessness when exposed to adverse conditions. In other words, a passive defensive strategy, or simply trying to endure the worst until it ends, is actually the most hardwired, instinctive biological response we have to bad experiences. So just to slow that down with that. In other words, that's our hardwired response, is to freeze. Freeze first. That's fascinating to me. Before fight or flight, before tend and befriend, these other adaptive responses, freeze is actually the most primal response, the reaction that evolution initially favored. If we don't want to freeze, we have to learn that we can fight back. We have to learn that we can take flight. We have to learn that we can ask for and give others support. And then she's talking about, well, how do we learn our own power? So that's like mind-boggling to me, that this is not like our most basic response is that freeze. Oof. And that's what we're trying to learn to move out from. So no wonder we freeze. And Stacey, I was thinking about you when you were talking about this at office hours, that this is what you have to overcome. And I thought, yeah, you and all of us. And that this work that we're doing together is very much about developing those neural pathways over and over and over again, so that we can actually do something besides just immobilize into this stuff. So I see it's 5 to 5. I better speed up. This is how it happens. This is how in history in high school, we never got past, I don't know. We never got to the 20th century. That's what I remember. We spent so much time on Mesopotamia. All right, so I'll see. So notice your frozen fear personas. And then sadness, also very adaptive. So the next time you're sad, and now I can think of Kathleen and your tears of jewels and gems. Next time you're sad, to understand, okay, good idea that I'm so sad. Yay me that I'm sad. Oh, I need to be sad. And part of what I'm doing is, why would I fall to the ground and start sobbing? Isn't that interesting? Why wouldn't I just stand up and sob? Well, I think because I'm immobilizing myself. I'm already losing this precious person. And so now I don't want to threaten that person. I don't want to be like, well, probably I'll be like, don't go. But I probably wouldn't be like, hey, fuck you, don't go. That's not going to help. I'm not going to try to, be just as just then with them. I'm like, oh, I'm going to immobilize myself. Oh, go. Right. And create that cry response, which is going to potentially pull them back to me as another mammal. Because that's designed for that. And that protest, that is such a great expression. It's such a great expression. It's so useful. Think of babies and their parents. That crying, like the parent will get up in the middle of the freaking night for the 5th time, right? Because it's, whoa, it pulls them forward. Now I know they have their feelings too, right? But it's a really adaptive response. Yay, sadness. So is despair. I really appreciate despair so much. But look at what despair is doing. It's adaptive. I've given up. Like I cried and cried and cried. This takes a lot of energy. Go, don't go, don't go. Oops, nobody's coming. Oh, that's so sad. Whew. So I've abandoned my protest. It takes too much energy to keep protesting. So I give up. Right? I just finally give up. Well, what's that? Depression. No one's coming. I give up. Right? That's what we say. I give up. I give up. It's not helping. I give up. So why would I do that? Because I need to conserve my resources. And here I'm like, no, go. And they're like, shut up. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, kind of, right? Because they get into this power over experience. And if we are caught in that, right, anybody else kind of wincing right now? I am. If we're caught in that sadness, anger, sadness, it's power down, power up experience. At some point, we're starting to elicit this aggression. I can't believe you're still crying. I'll give you something to cry about. All that stuff, right? Good idea to stop crying. Except for how painful that is. Okay, I'll just go into my room and I'll just cry. Right? Or I'll stop crying and I'll just curl up in a ball. Now, here's a thing to know with this, is if I want to move out of despair, I need to get that pump going again. I need to find that crying again. This is the step out of despair, is to start protesting. Even if I have to make myself do it. I want to die, I want to die. Really, it's time to die. So that I don't get anything going from the alphas around me. Okay, wait a second. Maybe I don't really want to die today, but really I do. Well, what am I supposed to do? Oh, I'm going to start crying. I'm going to get that activation again. I'm going to start going in this direction instead of going in this direction. Now that's a huge thing I just said. So I'm going to pause and see. I'm going to stop the share. We'll come back to the last two, see how you're doing with that, because that's a big deal, what I just said.
I'm wondering about this adaptive piece. Like I'm thinking about all of the ways that, okay, it makes sense to have hierarchy when there's a threat outside. These last two, with sadness and despair, you're naming the threat as in the relationship. And you're naming the patterns that come up that actually suck. And like that there's
So much.
And so I'm wondering, yeah, I'm not quite getting the I'm not seeing how it like actually works. I'm seeing how it's what we do and where we get stuck. And so that's coming up for me.
So thanks. Exactly. So let me see if I can suss it out better. If I'm sad, I'm crying still. And so now I'm still very relational. And what I'm doing is I'm indicating something, like I'm expressing something that will pull for the power up to come back. Come back. And so that's great. That's very adaptive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like that initial pull, like, okay, use it a little bit and then it works.
Yes. Yeah. And it works very, very well. It's designed to work. Think of puppies that are crying. I mean, think of all of that, like crying really pulls like, oh. So it works very well. And to notice it looks like the resource is outside of me. I don't have the inner resource. I need that from outside of me. I need to pull that into me. So that's the hierarchical piece. I need a power over to come take care of me.
Got it.
Right? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about like what does success mean? What does adaptive mean? Is it that the relationship feels good? Probably not. Is it that I have enough resources to survive? I'm sort of in this, I'm a little, I can feel myself wanting to rabbit hole.
Well,
I want to burrow. Yeah.
Burrow, because like for us to really figure this out is a big deal, because I'm not sure. I mean, I've never seen anybody else talking about this. So,
Yeah. So the piece of at what point does relational connection become actually a piece of what we need for survival?
When we are babies and we have parents, and when we're 10 and we have parents, and when we're 40 and we have a partner, some of the time, yeah, and then, but if it continues, if it gets locked in, that's when it's no longer adaptive. But yesterday I tripped and I actually broke my toe, and I was crying, and I was like, oh, Kathy wasn't here. The dogs are like, oh, and they're coming around me like, but I was like, that I really, that was, I needed that. I needed some help. Like trying to figure out what do I do, and eventually called Kathy, and I called the people, and they said, yes, do this thing. I called the doctor. I had showed him my video. He said, go do that. It's like, thank you. But if I did that longer than that, that would have been a problem. Especially for me. I mean, at some point it's like, okay, because it's time for me to take care of me. And if I was locked in some way where like I kept doing, or let's see, where would I have rolled to the next to the despair? Well, there was nobody there. I mean, if there had been nobody there and I was just all by myself and I didn't know what to do, probably at some point I would have needed to pull in and just stop, just kind of stop, because there was nobody coming potentially.
Mm.
But the protest actually totally worked. Thank you, everybody. That makes sense. But
Yeah,
then in
that's
relationship,
helpful.
right? So that in perhaps you've had this experience of it continuing to, no, really, you need to take care of me. And I've, that we get lost in those personas, and then the annoyance starts. Like, oh, I'm so sick of you. Why are you? Oh God, or maybe people aren't saying it, but like, oh, I can't even go home because, right? That whole experience. So that power over is turning into contempt. And it's no longer adaptive to be crying. It is adaptive to disconnect and pull in, pull away, because it's going to start to elicit aggression from that power over.
So it sounds like you're saying it's not really a persona. So I heard somebody once on a recording that I watched, one of yours, Julie, talk about clean fear and dirty fear. Like, she gave the story of she saw a rattlesnake on a trail, and her body just responded, and she jumped farther and higher than she ever had before. She couldn't replicate it. And so that was very clean, and then the chemicals moved through her body and it was done. Versus like a dirty fear persona, you have the story kind of running through the back of your mind, you're pulling other people in. That's kind of what I'm thinking of. Adaptive is like, okay, the body's natural response, you do this thing, but then if it sticks around, then it turns into persona, becomes persona. I don't know.
Great. I wonder. Seems like
Yeah.
it. Because right then, if I go into my despair persona, and because I've got Agnes angst waiting always, if I go into that place and I'm like, yeah, see, people aren't there, and whatever I'm doing from Agnes, yes, that is no longer clean adaptive despair. It's me not wanting to feel the rest of what I'm feeling.
Yes.
Whew. Big stuff. Okay, we just have guilt and shame left, and then we'll take a break. Okay, so guilt and shame. What? Adaptive? Yes. Adaptive guilt. Well, we know, we've heard it. We need guilt. We need shame. We need shame. Well, I think that's probably true. I should be guilty some of the time, because why? What is that doing for me? Well, let's see. What's a time that I felt guilty recently? I can't elicit it at the moment. I feel guilty often, so that's easy. But I can't give you a good example at the moment. What's my guilt persona? I'm not Catholic, so I don't think I actually have ever named a guilt persona. That's weird, because that's a good one. But basically, an adaptive guilt response is, for me, right? What is guilt? Anger plus fear. Anger plus fear. I've immobilized these two really huge energies. Well, why would I do that? Well, because I'm scared that if I'm angry, the alpha is gonna kill me or something, or throw me in jail, or whatever the thing is. Just no longer allow me to have access to resources. So long as I put those two things together, I stop my impulse, because I'm afraid of the ramification of that. So if I stop my impulse, I'll just pretend to be Catholic for the moment. Excuse me if I'm besmirching Catholics. I don't mean to. Kathy's Catholic. I'll try it a little bit, but it's just so clear, right? It's if I say how bad I am, oh, that was a bad behavior, I'm sinful, I did the bad thing, please forgive me, I'm not feeling this. I'm just looking outside of myself, immobilizing my own impulses. But that's the whole point of all that stuff, is of religion, and not just Catholicism, for sure. Like all of those different things we can think of, is to, I mean, that was a good idea sometime along the way. And maybe even now, that I should immobilize some of those impulses to not kill people or hurt them, and to feel some fear around, if I really want to punch somebody, maybe I better not do that. Okay, so same thing with shame. Shame's the ultimate. Yay, shame. Cuts everything, just pulls that power cord right out of the wall. I'm totally stopped myself. I completely shut off my own personal power. Somebody somewhere, maybe it's in my own head, said, yeah, because Julie, you suck, you bad sucker. And how could you, because you are ridiculous, right? And maybe it's in my own head, or maybe somebody around me was like, oh, jeez. And I'm like, oh God. Ugh. That I could get really mad and punch him, but right, I shouldn't do that. Exploder. Not a good idea. So then, I'm too scared to do it. All right, that's built into me. But now I feel so sad because I'm disconnected from me. Very adaptive. Totally great response to stop me right in mid tracks. But I wanted to punch him. Don't do that, Julie. Okay. Bad Julie. I'm so bad I would even think about punching somebody. Oh, what kind of person am I? Who would ever even think of doing that? Bad. Right? So I'm just in there aggressing against me, so that I'm not doing the bad thing. Because again, that's socially to my benefit. Okay, I'm gonna stop the share. I know that's too many words, but it's big. So when you're in shame, okay, find your shame personas. Anybody? Let's see, what are my shame personas? Ooh, I can see them. They're all right there. The one I want to kill myself. I want to hurt myself. I want to hit myself. All those things. Because stop it, bad Julie. So find your own shame personas. You've got them. I've got them. Okay, so what? The only problem is that when we're stuck in them, and then we believe ourselves, and we think it's I think I want to kill myself, so I better do it. That's the problem. Instead of, what am I really feeling? Okay, can I move up? Can I find my body again? Okay, you all look frozen to me. Are you there? We got to get you unfrozen before the break, or maybe the break will help you. What's happening? How are you doing?
I'm just thinking about how mad I am about how people shame each other. So
bad people, how could they?
I just get like into pride around, because like it's just so there, and like, so my shame persona is, maybe they're right, maybe they're all right.
Well,
and then I just flip up into like, fuck that, like that's messed up, like, skip them all back over there. But yeah, there's my shame persona is probably like, yeah, I really am a bad person.
It's true.
And I know that I'm a bad person. And I'm not doing anything to make it better.
Yeah. And I should.
Like, I don't know what the name of that would. Yeah, I should really like go dig myself into a hole and never come out because they're all
Right.
right.
And this is when, when I just want to sort of impulse to cry, because of course, and it's totally true in the moment, we believe ourselves, we believe these states of consciousness. And then we can spend years in therapy trying to undo that, because it's true, I am bad. And let's remember, the first time I knew I was bad, it was 3 or 4, and so let's talk about how bad I was at 3 or 4 because I wanted to kill my little sister, whatever. It's like, oh, that's not the point. It's not going to get better from that place. Because what needs to happen is I need to feel how much I wanted to kill my little sister, but how scared I was of my mother and how sad I was about disconnecting from myself and that impulse. That's what's going to move it. But if I just talk about how bad I am, what I'm practicing is how bad I am. And we can talk about, why do I want to die? Of course I want to die because there's basically something wrong with me. Everybody on this call, we were all raised, oh, my poor dog is shaking. I'm sorry, Cody. I know. See, I get so declarative and alpha that scares her. Oh, I feel sad now. I have to be nicer. She thinks I'm being mean to you because I'm being so declarative. But really, what I mean to say is, if you want to kill yourself, the thing to do is to let yourself feel anger and fear and sadness. Now, okay, I just want to show you. There's Cody. She's shaking. Right? No, she's molting. She smells bad right now. I can smell her fear. Oh, see what I've done to my poor dog? I'm so bad.
Well, what I'm getting is that her shaking was a very adaptive move to get you out of power over.
Look, it worked.
Sounds like some shame.
Comforting her, and I do. I feel. What have I done to my dog? It's very adaptive. Her shaking is very adaptive. So stress at this point. What I was going to say is, we were all raised in a religious context, even if you weren't raised in the religion. Sorry, y'all, you were raised in Western European context. Oh, now my other dogs. Really, we're going to have to take a break in a minute because I don't have any more hands. We're all raised in a religious context that basically says there's something wrong with us. Oh, good, now I can offer somebody else. Go, Bart, go be aggressive. Yes, have them go out the door. Go, yeah, good idea. Work.
That phone stop.
So we have this implantation in us that helped us be in hierarchy. That says, really, there's something very wrong with you. You have original sin. So you're stuck with that. Too bad for you. You can try to work your way out of it for the rest of your life by doing good works. There probably won't be enough. Well, that really helped our culture. Still does. Really helps for our culture. Except for how it's not, because we lose your real essence, your real authentic expression. So that's a little problem. Besides that, it's great. So don't believe us. There's nothing wrong with you, and there never was. Don't believe us. All that happened was that you were scared and mad and sad. Scared.
I remember one time I asked you, but how many times does somebody deserve forgiveness? And I was thinking about myself, like doing things over and over again. And you said infinity. And I always remember that.
Because we never
Because
meant
it's
it.
like, put your brain back on. It's like, whole
We never
brain.
meant it in our right mind, in our creative brain. Nobody ever meant it. We didn't. We meant to be in acceptance and joy, and we didn't mean to do that thing or all those things. We just didn't mean to. But we were in reactor brain and we believed ourselves. And we still do. And I still do. Until I can remember, because you all are here. Thank you. That was a big one. Okay, so let's move around, huh? Let's take 5. I'm gonna stop the recording. We'll come back and then we'll try to process some of that. That was a lot. Woo. All right. So Stacy, you started a sentence with regards to fear. Well, I don't really know what you said, but
No, with regards to shame.
oh, shame. Sorry, shame. Of course.
So I found it interesting when you were talking about, we're all in a religious context, which makes perfect sense. And I grew up in a born again Christian family. And so, of course, being queer, you were going to hell. There was no question about it. And so a lot of shame, which I've worked very hard at dealing with, but not necessarily in the way that you talked about. So is the way to move through what you're saying, the way to move through shame is to feel the emotions that are surrounding it.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
that's exactly what I would say. To move through what
Okay.
what were you scared about? What were you mad or are you mad about? And then to reclaim that connection to yourself.
Mhm.
Had to give up. And that is a perfect example, right? Social order says queer, so we're going to attach hell to it, and think of all the other things that have a hell to attach to it. Hell is very handy for this, very handy. I mean, what a great, right? I mean, whoever came up with hell,
Yeah.
so smart. This place that nobody ever really knows about, but might really be there, but many people really believe is true, and that was a good idea. Anyway, whether you believe it or not, it's up to you. But that was smart, and it totally has supported social order, hierarchy. Yeah.
Thank you.
Also, in regarding to shame,
Yeah.
what if someone can't find their anger? I'm thinking about a client who just like lives in, he bounces back between despair and shame, and he's terrified of his anger.
Terrified.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, he's got this story that's the reason why his wife left him, that it's because of that one time that he got really angry. And so like how, yeah, right?
And he could be right. And the stories that we attach to that, I mean, just think of the social drippage, the social weight that we've put on this. Now, not for bad reasons. I mean, right, how much violence have we all witnessed in our lifetime? And then going back into millennia, I mean, that's, our species does not know how to handle our anger. So good idea to call it all bad and make it all attached to the devil and say, no, we're not going to do that anymore. We're just going to be pure and white, light. Right? All the stuff that's attached. Think devil, red energy, aggression, sexuality, passion. So yeah. And aggression is aggression. We all have it. He has it. So what's he supposed to do with it? Feel it without hurting people. Feel it without hurting people. It's the toxicity of this. It's my destructive tendency. It's me wanting to punch somebody in the face instead of, right? Do I really want to punch somebody in the face? Actually, I don't actually have that impulse. I did once. I can remember that. But I don't, it's more about just wanting to, for it to stop. I mean, just for, that is my impulse. Anyway,
Mhm.
it's the destructiveness that's the issue. If
Mhm.
anger wasn't destructive, if we could call it just shrafada, we were calling it Fred once at the beginning of the year. If it just was a energy, it's just an energy. It's our life energy. Maybe that's something you might try with him, Kathleen, is could he just call it Fred? I mean, it doesn't have to have all of the connotations. It's his life
Mhm.
energy. It's his creativity and passion. What
Mhm.
he does with it is the issue. If he actually
Mhm.
called his wife some horrible names or pushed her or hit her or whatever, right? That's the problem. The anger itself is not the problem.
Mhm. So I'm thinking about, like, is it just playing with, like, we're gonna create this energy. Let's see if we can just play with it, because I don't we keep going into the body, and like it's always this empty pit in his stomach and this like heaviness in his chest.
Have
So
you asked him
it's-
to uncollapse?
we do things that uncollapse.
I would
Um,
I would talk this, I would intellectualize here and talk about
mhm,
what's bad about anger.
mhm,
Really go there. Really mind that field of tell me
mhm,
all the bad things that you know about anger, because he knows a lot. I mean, we're
mm,
surrounded, we're in such a violent culture. So,
mm,
I mean, he knows. And again, I've said it before here, I think that the scourge of the nice guy, plenty of men are caught in that. Women too, women who don't want to be bitches, right? We've got our own thing going, but wow, men who know they should not, they're bigger, they know they're bigger than their, right? Physically, to walk around bigger than the person you're most intimate with, that's got to be strange. I mean, what do you do with that? To have more muscles, to have the ability to really hurt this person. So I don't know. I don't know what that's like. Um, but I don't think it must be really challenging how to fully allow all that energy and all the stuff about sexuality that we have, and to have that mixed up, and to
mhm,
separate off, and you're too much and you always want to have sex, and right, there's a lot to mine there, but
mhm,
it's just energy. It's all just energy.
mhm. Yep. Cool. I've got some ideas.
Right. Anything else for folks? Yeah. Woof, 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 woof. Really moving. My dog and the dogs and I, we played. So that was a good thing to do with some of that energy. I don't know what you did during that. Sent them off with the squeak toy.
I've been thinking about Brené Brown. I don't know if this is a time to ask about this.
Yeah.
So you're familiar with Brené Brown?
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, she started doing her work in shame. And one of the things I've noticed about her career, because shame and vulnerability, is she personally kind of worked through all, like, not that anyone ever fully works through it, but she's really worked through quite a lot, just being so public. And she has like a new television special coming out based on her new book. And one of the things that I noticed about Brené Brown is, and I'm curious what you think, I'm wondering if a lot of the time she's in pride at this point. So it's a really, because like I think, oh wow, she's really worked through her shame. And so this allows her to be in this public spotlight in a way that the woman who did the TED talk, who was like hiding under the covers because, oh my God, people are watching it, would never have even dreamed of doing. And now she's like, you know, talking like, you know, like, and it's really, it's fascinating to me because I'm curious what you think. That's all.
Well, I haven't seen her. I love her. I love her work.
Yeah.
Right. What does it take to stand in front of a TV camera. Like it probably takes, just like me, like I'm being very declarative to the point of scaring my dog. So, right, it's a bearing, it's a presence, which is a power over presence. Is that bad? I'm not in front of a TV camera. Well, I guess I am, but tiny little TV. Anyway, so yay, bravo for her. And for me, I have some trouble with her work, even though I love her work. I have trouble talking about shame. Like we should talk about shame and what we're ashamed about. So I think we're practicing it. We're practicing a state. Again, I love her work. I love reading it. I just worry that any time we're to start circulating in that zone, what we're doing is legitimizing, validating it as a real place. I don't think animals, clearly they feel shame, right? Like, woo, they go in, they stink, they slink. But I don't want to practice it with them. It's like, yeah, right. I want to, from either direction. Oh, I feel bad. Okay, let's move through it. Let's not talk about it. Because now we're tilting into the induction of these states. And if now we're going to talk about all the times that I have felt so bad about who I am, I mean, there's a place for that. I know there's a place for that. Oh, I didn't want to tell you about this terrible thing I did. Okay, I told you. Phew, finally, it's out in the open. Yes, there's a place for that. And at what point is it just me practicing that state?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think her message, especially with vulnerability, was it's like your top 5 people that you talk about. But at least in my industry, over the years, people have really taken that to mean tell the entire internet. Right? And is that necessarily an adaptive move, right? Because you're now moving from 5 intimate people you trust, and maybe you've got 10, or maybe you've got 2, or to making it a kind of vulnerability performance.
Well, and I mean, I don't know the answer. And I wonder also, am I just letting myself stay in a power down position? Is that really what I'm doing, is saying, okay, mea culpa, I'm so bad, I'm so bad. Which I think with some activism, it's possible to go there. See, I am so bad, I'm going to silence myself because I don't want somebody else to be contemptuous of me.
Can I say something?
Sure, yeah.
I'm curious with Brene Brown's work and like the storytelling that happens, like I feel like the cultural shift that her work has brought. I feel like the vulnerability doesn't necessarily mean that we're telling the story of the shame, but that we're telling what we're feeling. At least that's how I've experienced it.
So more of authenticity, it sounds like, is what you're really carrying. Like, here's what's really true for me.
Yeah, to me, the shame story is about getting in touch with yourself and then finding your feelings and then telling your story from that place. That's how I've understood it.
Kind of was moving back up and out then.
Yeah, exactly.
Self.
Getting back in my body.
Mm-hmm. Back in my body.
Yeah. Another question. Maybe it's going to take us in a different direction, but it's also about Brene Brown's work with, I think her new book, I've only read the beginning, but it seems like the premise is about like identifying all these different emotions. And
oh yeah, the encyclopedia, or is that?
Yes, it's like all the emotions.
Atlas, it's Atlas of the Heart. Is that the one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I heard her speak about it, and I read the first bit of it about like the need to have the vocabulary to identify all of these different emotions in order to express them. And I'm curious because in the work that we do, I feel like there's just like 5. Right? Like, let's just pick one of the 5 and simplify and move the energy from there and not actually create. I think she had like there's 89 or something in her book. So I'm just curious to hear you speak to that if you're willing. I don't know, they feel different to me.
yes, I actually picked up her book and looked at it and thought, yeah. I mean, there's another, I'm sure you might have seen the big poster with 300 emotions, or like, there's all kinds of things. It's fun stuff. It's like the Pantone, is it Pantone? Like who's a color person, the color wheel, right? The Pantone of emotion. It's fun to parse it. I totally can see why people want to do that. For me, what I'm most interested in is moving out of that stuff. So I don't see something adaptive about staying in it longer. So that's really what I'm looking for, is the shoot out, right? There's my dog. The shoot out, and the shoot out to me is in the most basic emotions, the ones that are hardwired in us. Mad, sad, scared, they're adaptive. They're telling us, they're communicating between us and the outside world. And so if I feel that, I can move out of my reactive stuff back into creative stuff. That's what I'm interested in. I also think that a lot of those emotions, I don't know what's on her list of 89, but if we come up with a few, like maybe disappointment, or a lot of those are thoughts plus emotions. But I don't know if that's true. We'd have to actually look at her atlas to see. But I think it's, to me, that's, and going back to Lisa Feldman Barrett's work about how emotions are basically our cultural constructs. And that's really what her point is, that they are all ways to kind of communicate between us culturally, and it's different from culture to culture what emotions we are even talking about. So that's got its place, but that's not this work. This work is moving through stuff.
That helps me sort of categorize it, of like, oh yes, the nuances, having 89 words is helpful in expression and communication, and it's more poetic. It's beautiful to be able to have it honed in to like, oh, I feel ecstasy rather than I just feel happy.
Yeah.
But then when we actually want to move the emotions, it's just energy. And so to have it simplified down to the 3 basic reactive ones makes it easier to move it. So we don't spend a whole bunch of time being like, well, is it regret or is it disappointment? Let's talk about that.
And I love that it's poetic. And I've thought that as I look at my own writings, like my writing is not poetic. There's a lot of things. I can describe it in many ways, but that wouldn't be one of them. So thank God for poetry. Oh, thank God for poetry. Thank God that we've got all of those other elements of life and ways to experience them.
One thing I love about having just a limited number of like, boom, can list them, is it helps me to not go into my head and stay in my head. It's like, oh, right, notice it, but then boom, into the body. Yeah.
Boom, into the body.
I could imagine my perfectionist spending a whole lot of time in those 89. Like, well, which one is it? Yeah.
Which could be a fun way to spend a day. But this depends on how you want to spend your time.
Julie, just a question about kind of talking about the emotions. When do you go into psychoed with clients on like kind of the adaptive functions, or kind of explaining the emotions like you named earlier, that, you know, an example of when you might want to kind of unpack anger more, but you could just say more about that.
I don't know if you know Kim Emmert, but she's a couple of years out. She was the person who was supervising our practicum students this time. So the reason I'm bringing her up is because she uses this a lot with clients. In fact, I forget to use this, but she says, oh, this is one of her favorite handouts. She comes back to it over and over. that she wants people to understand, oh, of course you're feeling despair. Like that, she finds that very useful for folks. So how much do I do it? Probably not as much as her. I kind of forget about it. In fact, I was like, oh yeah, let's go back through. Oh yeah, this is good stuff. So, so Alex, I'd say, I don't know. I think for people to, people mostly think we shouldn't be feeling what we're feeling. Kind of starting there. And I sure shouldn't be, well, right, Kathleen, I shouldn't be feeling that anger. So to validate that, to bring that point home over and over and over. No, good idea. Thank goodness you have pride today. Yay, you needed to. That was a good idea. Your kids really needed you to step in and say, what were you thinking? With that little lilt of contempt. Because they needed you to be in charge. Right, so to help people legitimize and validate this emotional experience that they're having, because mostly people's experience is, if I'm not fine, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that like that this handout or this information can be used to kind of support clients in cultivating an attitude of acceptance and even like appreciation, and help them in welcoming their experience as opposed to like pushing it away.
So glad you brought that in, because we have a few more minutes here. Going back to this, to remember, oh yeah, this. These also have adaptive functions. Thanks, Alex. Yay, you. But exactly how you just put that what we are doing here by bringing these forward and saying, adaptive, then allows people to come over here, come back above the line, come back out into creative brain, to say, okay, I haven't faced that. It turns out I really am angry. Because right now I'm resisting my anger. I shouldn't be angry. I don't want to be that angry guy. So I'm not. So I haven't faced it. I'm not that guy. I'm this guy. That's so much better. Oh, it turns out, sorry, I won't keep spinning that. Oh, and now this is setting us up for FACT tomorrow, which we'll play with more. We're not going to do that now. Look, FA, face, accept. Yay, very powerful process. What haven't I faced? I haven't faced my body. I haven't faced this tight jaw. One of my favorite things is I'll ask people what's happening in their bodies. They're like, oh, my stomach hurts and my chest is tight. And then, oh, great. And how's your jaw? Oh, yeah, well, my jaw's always tight. It's fine. It's always tight. It's like, oh, I know, honey. Exactly. So
Julie, with the questions to ask, is that if you're trying to get to neutrality or you're trying to get to acceptance, or like when are you asking those questions?
I'm going to stop the share and look at you, Megan, and will you ask me that question again so I really understand? I was
just wondering, it says like the question to ask, and is that the question to ask if you're trying to get to neutrality or you're trying to get to acceptance? Or
yes, right, because good. Oh, you just sussed out that. Nice job. Well done.
I don't know yet.
Great. I know. You don't even know the cool thing you did. Because here, if I'm in guilt, I'm going to ask these questions.
Oh,
right? Or if I'm in sadness, what have I loved? Like, but here, if I want to be in neutrality, it's a little bit different. it's going to give me a leg up into neutrality. So it's a little different. Now, I could just be like hanging out in neutrality and be like, what else haven't I faced? It'd be an acceptance. I'm so in acceptance today. What else haven't I accepted? I mean, that probably would be a kind of cool thing to do. But probably it'll look a little different, where I really want to cultivate neutrality and acceptance. And so these are the questions I'm going to ask so that I can get there. Because neutrality, if I ask this question, what have I not faced, which is the F of the FACT, it's a huge shift of energy right there. That question, that's why, like, yay, Gay and Katie, because it's taking me out of this. No, it shouldn't be that way. I can't be that way. I can't be feeling. I can't. No. Ooh, you, life. Oh, whew. I'm resisting, but now it's taken me. It's a huge shift of consciousness to ask that question, because it's gotten me out of resistance into flow. That's a big deal. Neutrality is a big FD. Okay, because it's taking me out of, I don't want it to be true. You shouldn't have. I can't be. Oh, I am. Oh. We're coming into flow. Hello, back to flow. And acceptance will keep us going in that direction. And each of these is my shift in power. Like, it's taking me into this larger and larger, more and more expanded realm. It's not that this is better to be in peace than to be in neutrality or anger, right? It's not better. It's just adaptive. Do I want to exist as one with all? Oh, okay. Yeah, why not? That'd be nice. All right, well then, how can I do that? How can I connect with that? Well, maybe I have to have my emotions, and then maybe I need to do some of this stuff, and then maybe I can come up here. Okay, yay, back into oneness. Or I can stop here and I can say, yeah, I really like to appreciate right now. All right, this is how I do that. I orient to the positive, ask a question, and I'm really starting to plug in. That's what appreciation is doing. It's increasingly powerful. That appreciation, very powerful. Yay, Cynthia, our model of appreciation, model appreciator. There are several others of you too, but she's such a stalwart appreciator. And some of you stalwart lovers, I could open up and look at all of you like, right, I know you're doing that. That's what you're doing. And you're saying this. How can I generate the energy? That's what you're doing. I know you're doing that. And you're doing this. You're connecting with this huge energy. It's bigger and bigger. Wow, look at what you're doing by doing that. Very adaptive. Thank you for doing that. And joy gets even bigger. So now it's separate, it's bigger, not better, but it's a higher vibration. And now we're in this dancing molecule arena. Yippee, pure life energy, woo, bubbles, celebration, exuberance, and then up to peace. So also each separate, adaptive, and wouldn't that be fun to have essence names at every single one of these? Maybe you'd have 5 essence characters at your appreciation. I don't know, right? You might have 3 joy essence parts of you. Maybe the one that's just joyful quietly and the one that's joyful kicking up your heels. Thank you to Kathleen, who's also always our aliveness picture on our website. Right? Yay! So that too. So I'll stop the share. It's adaptive. Yippee! Bring it on home. Anything you want to say about creative brain or anything else from this afternoon?
I'm curious where we're going to go with this tomorrow, Julie.
Yes, well, we're going to practice coaching. And we're going to bring in the tools. So specifically, because we haven't looked at FACT as a group? I don't think we have we? I mean, I know it to other groups, yeah. So I want to be able to study that because I want you to be able to use that. And since we haven't even picked it up, I want you to know that one because it's powerful. So we'll be playing with that. I just made a note. Ooh, but I'm not going to tell you. Coaching people. What will you be coaching people in? I don't know. But so to use this and then to get out the other processes, the climbing the inner map process, the shift and anchor process, so that you've got those at your disposal about as you're interfacing with the inner map, knowing that you can use a variety of tools, as well as SEW, right? Our old standby.
I have a question about the value, the value that people place on above and below the line.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a two-part question.
Yeah.
One, when you came into our community, they're very love and light averse. And so the big struggle was, what do you mean this is above the line? And why is there this hierarchy between above and below? And my anger is righteous and like all of this kind of stuff. Which, has its, I think you understand like that kind of, that value, that valuation, right?
Absolutely.
But then there's also, I think there's the reality that, if I look at my own life, I want to live above the line. And I think a lot of like in one-on-one, it's a very different experience. There's nobody's love and light averse there. Everyone wants to be happy and they want to feel peace and right. And so, even if you look at those spiritual tradition, like the world's spiritual traditions, it's all teaching love and peace and how to get there. So I suppose this is slightly intellectual, but how do you deal with that? Because there's a part of me that actually, I do think it is above the line and I think that's okay. But then there's also the resistance to it. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally. So a few things. First, existential kink. If you haven't read that, dark, yay, darkness, woohoo. So that's really interesting. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but I'm getting there. So really looking at darkness as a kind of really being in the energy of it. So that's a book if you haven't read it yet, Vanessa. But the other thing I'd say is, yes, absolutely. It's so easy. It's just, I teach it this way up and down just because it's simple and people totally can get it like right away, but it's not. It's expanded contraction. And that then the expansion is just subsumes all the contraction. Like it's all the same. It's all energy. It's all just energy. And I really believe this. Is it true? Who knows? The stuff below the line uses up energy. It costs us. Why is it negative? It costs me. Like yesterday, like when I'm moaning and groaning and crying, like I was tired. Cost me to be scared and scared. Cost me. Is it bad? No, it's no. So, right. If I'm angry, it just costs me. It costs me adrenaline and cortisol, and it's hard on me to be in stress chemicals. So that's a big reason that I prefer. Well, I'm adding other reasons as I'm saying that, but why I'm a aficionado of above the line, because it doesn't cost me. Because being in creative brain, I can like do that all the live long day. I still need to sleep, but that's generative. And I also think it for us as a species, it's collaborative. It creates collaboration, and reactive brain does not. Reactive brain creates disconnection immediately. It creates hierarchy. So there's that too. So
that's really helpful, actually, that difference between generative, yeah.
Reactive brain is power over and power under. It just is.
Disconnection, because yeah, there's a difference between disconnection and destruction, because there's a room for destruction as well in our world, right? Like that's part of this life cycle,
Yeah. Right.
death and everything. But there's a difference between that and disconnection. So thank you.
All right, we're coming to the end. I know it's 6 o'clock our time and whatever time it is up in Nova Scotia and out in Cincinnati, 7. So anybody have any last
Bedtime.
bedtime, whatever it is, it's bedtime, dinner time. Anything else before we end tonight? And then we will pick it up tomorrow and play, run around. Just carefully. Thank you for walking through this because I really, this information as you play with it leads to freedom. It's powerful. And so I very much appreciate you're willing to learn it at this level, because I think it's putting something into your hands that I'm excited to see what you do with it. So sleep well.
Julie's tomorrow's at the same place it was last time?
Yes, same place. We're back at Out Boulder, 10 a.m., 10 to 1. And it looks like I see that some folks are going to stick around afterwards and do some playing. So good. Yeah.
What was it called again?
It's Out Boulder. Do you mean the place?
Out Boulder. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
3340.
Yeah, I'll find it. I have it.
I'll find
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm totally blanking on the
Like Mitchell or something
Mitchell.
road.
Yeah. I'll find it. That's okay. I just forgot the name. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Good night.
Julie,
Oh, wait.
wait. Julie, do
Wait.
you want to say something about essentials?
Oh yeah. Tell people about essentials. Is that what I should say? I know I'm terrible at this, Cynthia. Is that what you
I mean,
meant?
that was cool. That was great. The
Okay.
Essentials is next weekend and it'll be at the Star House, and please invite anyone. Also, it'd be helpful for us if you could register and let us know that you're coming. We're playing with numbers and how many how many packets to make. We are giving $100 rebate, $100 decrease in price. So if anyone is interested in coming, it will not be a hybrid because technology is not up there, but and if people have been in more than 2 classes, then they also get more of a discount. So
yeah.
Julie, there's a question about, can someone just come on Saturday or Friday?
On to essentials. Yes, why don't you just talk to me about it tomorrow? We'll figure that stuff out. Thank you, Cynthia, for remembering that. And thanks, Cynthia, for a great newsletter. And so good to see you all, and have a great night. I'm going to stop the recording.